I'm going to start by introducing each of our panelists, ask them to tell us a little bit of the story, either about their own entrepreneur experience, because I know they're all entrepreneurs, but a lot of what they do is foster and grow other entrepreneurs and help them get their businesses started. So they're either going to tell us a little bit about their own experience or some of the experiences they've seen with the companies and businesses they work with. So Olivier, why don't I start with you at the end?
Certainly. Thanks for having me. Olivier Pognon, for those that don't know me, a multimedia artist, videographer, photographer, run a small little agency called O&Co Media. And my journey to this particular stage in my life has been a little circuitous. I was a former banker in my previous life. Yeah, crunch numbers, came up to Connecticut to work for a small company called G Capital. And, people say that I started off like my dad, ended up like my mom. My dad was a banker, my mom was an artist, so I think I got influenced left and right. And came up in the early 2000s, got affected by the crash, got laid off, and I was always someone that was creative. I always loved to, from an early age, had a camera in my hand, had coloring books, the whole nine, and but I never really thought that I could actually do it as a profession. Where I'm from, I got a lot of layers from West Africa. Mom's French, born in Belgium, grew up in DC. So, the arts was never really something that you aspired to do. You'd be a banker, or a scientist or whatever. So, went to school, finance, economics, grad school, and thought that was what to do. And then came up to Connecticut, and I was moonlighting on the side, shooting for local photographers on the weekends, and enjoyed it quite a bit, and I was fairly good at it. They keep inviting me back. So when I got laid off, I ventured into some other ventures and basically didn't pan out. It was 100% commission, trying to do deals in Africa. And, you think doing a deal in America is tough. Tried doing it in Africa, and so while I wasn't married, I didn't have anyone to really fall back on in terms of income. I said, let me do something that actually gives me some cash flow. So jumped into the deep end with this creative business, and never looked back. So now I'm a lot happier, and love to create little test stories. So that's my little journey.
Thanks, thank you. So glad to have David Salinas with us, and many of you probably know David and all the work he's done, and I feel like every time I talk to David, there's another idea, a project that he's working on, and so many things have really taken off and been huge successes. I'm sure, David, there's many other ideas that we haven't heard about that didn't go as far as the ones that you've had, these huge successes that you've had. So tell us a little bit about your journey and being an entrepreneur. You seem to be a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah, so thank you. Thanks for having me. I had an interview yesterday, and I described myself as an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. I truly believe in the entrepreneurial journey. I love people that start businesses and do the risky stuff that you've done in your life, and the ups and downs of the roller coaster that is business and life. I love it. I dream about it. I support it. I like to mentor people in that space, but I'm also very much into the joy and the pain that comes from it myself. So I do launch a lot of businesses. I have those successful ones. I have some new ones. I'll tell you guys about some of the new ones that I'm working on. I just launched with the former CMO Markham, the accounting firm. We just launched a consulting firm called Chief Seconds. For those of you that don't know what a chief second is, back in the day when you had a duel, you had to decide on the rules of that duel. Your chief second would meet to decide on those rules. Nowadays, it's a corner man in a boxing ring or in the UFC. So it's chief seconds, and we do consulting, marketing, communications consulting, and M&A consulting for professional services firms that are like 50 million and above. So we just launched that. And announced it. I just announced that we're launching a cannabis company. We've got a technology in the cannabis space, so it's a platform play against the flower. All Connecticut guys, and we're launching in Massachusetts on December 10th, which I'm very, very excited for. I think it's going to be my biggest brand yet. And and I'm always looking for opportunity. I sort of live in a helicopter and scout, and I love, there's a great book called 0 to 1, which was by Peter Thiel, the founder of PayPal and one of the first dollars into Facebook, and he wrote a book called 0 to 1, and it's the art of sort of getting things started and getting it to 1. I love that space. I love to talk to people that are getting started, that are at that 0 stage, whether some entrepreneurs that are coming out of, or in collab, I shouldn't say coming out of collab, but in collab, or other incubators and whatnot. And it's the reason why I built District. District wasn't about real estate for me, it was about making a home for people like that, that was special, that would entertain and keep them happy while they were on their journey. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. Let me welcome Caroline Tammy-Smith. And Caroline, I talked to her yesterday. I said, really would love to have you join this panel because I think there's so much that you can add. And Caroline, you have your own experience of bringing Collab, a nonprofit, to life, but there's so many people that you have assisted with them pursuing their dreams to start business.
Yeah, thank you so much, Garrett, and great to meet everybody. I'm really honored to be on this panel with two people that I admire, and someone like David, who's been just a mentor and advisor and a role model for me for a long time. So I'm really honored to be on the panel. My name is Caroline. I'm one of the co-directors of an organization called Collab, which is an accelerator that supports local entrepreneurs, specifically in New Haven, but also across Connecticut. And our mission is really about building collective wealth and collective power among people of color and women through heart-centered entrepreneurship coaching, education, and organizing. And yeah, I didn't think that I'd be on this journey. At first I thought that I didn't have any entrepreneurs in my family and background. Both my parents are psychologists, but it's actually not true. On my mom's side, she's originally from South Korea. She immigrated here when she was 25. Her father was actually a rice entrepreneur and then a honey entrepreneur, both failed ventures, but what I really learned from his story is that he did what he needed to do to survive, and he did what he needed to do for his family, and he did it honorably, and I still admire him so much to this day. And then a lot of the sort of driving heart behind Collab is sort of two things. Is one, relationship with another woman, Margaret, who's my co-founder, who's actually another Korean woman, and a sort of bond that we formed from the very beginning when we met, when we first started Collab. And then second, a driving, kind of beating heart love for the city of New Haven. That's sort of the foundation of Collab, is a love of this city, a love of the people here, and a belief that brilliant ideas can come from every single neighborhood in the city, and they deserve investment and support. And that's what we try to do with Collab, is support individual entrepreneurs who have brilliant ideas and support them, especially at an early, that kind of tender early stage, to get from an idea that has a little bit of validation to that next level. And I think that the last thing I'd say is that we really believe a lot in kind of a theory around, we call it heart ethos, which is sort of the relationship between an individual entrepreneur's emotional resilience and their venture success. And so we focus so much on coaching because, of course, some of the challenges that entrepreneurs face are creating a really good business model or validating their idea or customer interviews. But a lot of it is much more emotional, about addressing those limiting beliefs they may have about themselves, or affording them the ability by themselves to imagine what's possible for themselves is sometimes what's standing in the way. And so that's why we focus so much on coaching and one-on-one support for entrepreneurs.
Thanks, Caroline. And I am Beckel Swanson, Executive Director with Concord. You and I have worked together for a long time in economic development, either in financing and now supporting businesses in this way. Concorp's taking a new approach to it, really bringing businesses in, giving them that capital and finance to be able to get started. Tell us a little bit about things you're doing at the Impact Lab.
Absolutely. So first of all, Garrett, thank you so much. I want to thank Garrett and his team, because as I'm listening to my co-panelists, I'm like, these are exactly the people I need to be talking to. Like, I really feel like I was meant to be here today with all of you. In terms of our commonalities, Olivier, we have a very similar background. So I'm from the Caribbean. I grew up in Barbados, and Caribbean parents, like with African parents, like they're pretty much just four options, you know, doctor, lawyer, engineer, disgrace to the family. That's it. And I was gonna be four, I'll tell you what. I wanted to do music. I wanted to study And that was a really hard sell. My dad said he's not gonna pay for me to learn how to starve. So I came up here to Hart School, and to make my father happy, I did 2 degrees, one in vocal jazz, the other in foreign languages, that part to please him. But mostly I did a music business degree, and I'm so grateful to this day that I went that route, because as much as I love jazz and I will always sing and always be in that space, I'm grateful for all of the business training I got in that space. Went from there to event planning, from there to economic development, which is how Garrett and I know each other, and then from economic development to small business financing. So I feel like my career path has led directly up to where I am now, which is working for Concorp and running the lab. It's a space right on sort of almost the border of Hampton and New Haven. And our mission at Concorp is to focus on minority-owned small businesses, especially in the New Hallville area, which is very underrepresented area. We're working on poverty alleviation, so we worked hard to give out grant money to people during COVID, just like $1,000 gift cards, just to help with day-to-day, existence. And the jewel in our crown, what we're really proud of, is a $200 million investment into Dixwell Plaza. So we have full site control. It took us 3 years to get that, but we have that now, and we've got beautiful renderings of what is going to come in that space. What happened, or how this came to be, how I came to be there, is that they had always planned, my colleagues, my C-suite, had always planned to have an incubator in that space, really focused on, like you, minority-owned businesses. And like you, a district, we wanted to have that support system for startup businesses. And it just so happened that the town of Hampton said, Nandil Group, our colleague, who is probably here today somewhere, approached Concorp and said, hey, we know you guys are planning to put an incubator in that Dixwell Plaza redevelopment. We have an incubator, would you like to buy it? And we said, yeah, sure. And that's how I came to be the executive director where I am now. So I can't tell you how much I love my job enough. Crazy hours, I was there till 9 o'clock last night, and it's an early start this morning, but everything I do up to this point in my career, and now even more so, is in support of small business people. I've been an entrepreneur myself, and it just makes me feel really good to know that when I wake up, I'm not just doing well, I'm doing good.
Thank you. We want to hear from the audience, so if you have questions, start formulating those. I'm going to ask one question here, and then we'll turn to all of you. Our theme for the Big Connect is finding your groove in a new era, and really the idea behind that is things have been so displaced. All of the norms that we all expected have changed, and so that's led a lot of people to reevaluate their lives. What do they want to do? What are they passionate about? So for anyone who's at that point, I've heard it in some of the things that you guys have all said, how do you take that first jump of, all right, I've had this idea for a long time, or this is what I'm passionate about. How do I now convert that into, I really want to make this my career, my business? Do you do it slowly? I heard, Olivia, you had a break in your job, and so that kind of forced you into that. But all of you, what are your experiences, either personally or what you've seen, that have helped people get to that point to actually start that business? Want to start?
I'll jump in. For me, so my entrepreneurship journey was, I did a solopreneur, I would say 10 plus years, being a solopreneur, doing SAT prep and college admissions counseling. And I came to that pretty much because, as much as I love to sing and I love to be in bands and start bands and work with musicians, every time I do a gig, because I felt so strongly about musicians and artists not being underpaid, I would lose money. I would make sure everybody else but me was getting paid fairly, and I'm sure you all know, like, the price for musicians hasn't changed in like what decades, like $100. That's it for a gig. So I didn't think that was fair. So every time I would book a gig with friends or with other musicians, I'm like, that's not right. I got to find a way to subsidize this, and I would lose money every time. Enjoyed it, but it was not an effective way to do business, right? What I did realize though was that everybody, all my friends, family, everyone who knew me would approach me and go like, could you edit this paper for me, or could you review this, or could you help me write this, or could you help my kid, get into this private school, or could you help my kid get into college? I was constantly being approached for that because people knew that was my skill set. And it finally dawned on me, why don't I focus on doing the thing that people are approaching me for? So a lot of times I tell entrepreneurs that, it's wonderful to have this dream of, since I was a child, I wanted to be a ballerina. But what is it that other people see your value prop as, right? What are people telling you, this is why I come to you, because this is the skill set, this is what I'm willing to pay money for. That was my light bulb moment. I'm like, oh, I can actually make money doing this as opposed to just, getting paid in gift cards and, and candy. And so that's pretty much how I started my entrepreneurship journey. Having the moment of, this is the value prop. I mean, this is what other people see as my value, and then monetizing that and realizing actually what that is worth.
That's really beautifully said. Thank you for that. A few things come to mind in the sort of journey of going for it. I think one thing that comes to mind is sort of lean towards being passionate about the problem that you're trying to solve more than the idea you currently have. Because in your process of talking to, let's just say, customers or talking to potential partners, the idea will change in some way, and that's a good thing. That's a proof that you're doing something right in the journey of entrepreneurship. But being passionate about the problem that you're trying to address, that probably will stay very consistent. I think that was true for me and Margaret when we first started Collab. We didn't set out to start an accelerator. The first iteration of Collab was an event series that was meant to bring sort of students and residents together in a sort of a mutual power space to address community issues. Because us as Yale students who had graduated noticed that the thing that connected us to New Haven was the relationships that we had formed since we had started school, the summers we had spent in the city, and that was what was valuable, especially for me, about my Yale experience, was getting to know the city. And so we started this event series, then people were coming up to us and saying, we have ideas that we want to take to the next level, but we don't know where to go. And that next iteration of this event series was Collab to support individuals who are coming our way. And so the driving passion for me and Margaret has always stayed the same, even though the idea changed, which is a love of this place. A couple other things that come to mind in the journey of going for it. One, leaning on your network and relationships. We always say that Collab is built on a foundation of relationships. And what's powerful about relationships is a couple things. One, they keep you grounded and accountable, and also buoy you in moments that are challenging, because as we all know, the entrepreneur journey is emotional, it's challenging, it can feel really isolating. And so we've found that our network of support, even those folks that ask us really hard questions, especially those folks that ask really hard questions, are those that both buoyed us and grounded us. And then the last thing I'll say is about intuition. I think one of the most powerful things we have as humans is I think our own gut and intuition. And it's interesting. It's almost like a little bit. It doesn't have to be, but it always feels like a tension with the advice around relationships. But I heard this quote recently that said, "Expertise does not lay outside of you," and I think that's especially really important for women and people of color to hear that you have a base of expertise right inside of you, and trust that gut and intuition that you've honed from years, that's been passed down from generations, from your ancestors. There's something there that's speaking to you, and trust that expertise and follow that expertise, as well as, of course, always gathering guidance and advice from other people. That's a given, but trust that gut that you have.
David?
So, I would say everything that you just said is accurate. You have to love what you're looking at, the problem. You have to be passionate about it. After that, I think it comes down to you have to be really critical of yourself, and I think that you have to let go of your own fears. Right. So the biggest thing that happened to me throughout my career, I didn't have a network. So I'm from New York. I come from a poor family. My father's from South America. He just sort of operated in life with this, he never showed fear, right? No matter what he did, he was never scared of it. There was no project, there was no mountain that he wouldn't, and he's still like that. He's amazing. And I learned that from him. He wasn't afraid to ask questions. So now fast forward, I'm in Connecticut. I have no network here because I'm from New York City. My network in New York City wasn't a great network, to be perfectly frank, because of where I grew up. And I had to roll the dice. My first move was to join the chamber. I've told this story many times. I paid the money and I faxed in my membership.
We don't take our fax ones anymore.
Thank you. I joined the thing because to me, the chamber represented the place to network, right? To meet people, to grow that. Now I have one of the strongest networks. Honestly, like, I'm immensely proud of what I built because I took it very seriously. So again, more exclamations for what you said. But more than that is that I realized very quickly that young, before I even got into business, that people share their fears, or they push their fears onto you. That creates excuses. And that's what gets in everybody's way that wants to be an entrepreneur. For me, business is less about expertise, it's more about energy. It's a flywheel, right? So I'm always putting out energy. Even when times are dark, and I've had dark times recently, I come out and everybody always says to me, how do you sleep? I get asked, how do I sleep all the time because of all the stuff that I do, right? And the answer is, I sleep like a baby, literally. Like when I lay my head down, when I'm done and I lay my head down, I'm out. And I wake up and I get 7-8 hours of sleep. I'm not working 4 hours, I'm not sleeping for 4 hours and hustle. No, the time when I'm working, and I'm putting it in, and I'm not making excuses, and I believe. And I don't listen to everyone's fears. If I did, I wouldn't have started an agency. I would have listened to everybody say, my marketing agency, I would have said, listen to everybody say, go work for somebody first, get some experience. No, I was 26 years old. I launched a company with $5,000. We have 52 employees today. 16 years later, we made it through 08. We made it through COVID. And we actually came out of COVID and we're stronger than ever, right? District. I had no idea. I was telling everybody these stories and visions of District about this building I was going to build, this community, and how it was going to look. And I was walking people through a dark garage with water leaking from the ceiling and puddles everywhere and broken windows. And I didn't realize that everybody was laughing at me because they thought I was going to fail because they were afraid of the project and the audacity, and they didn't have the audacity that I had to see it and to wrestle it to the ground and to talk to the big banks and the middle-sized banks and the small banks and local banks about financing a guy that had never done real estate before and didn't have no money to do this $25 million project. And then all of a sudden I did it, and now all of a sudden, and now I became a hero and a visionary, right? I see it all the time. That's always got a piece of the story. And I think that if you can block everyone else's fears away, and that's going to be your wife's fear, your husband's fear, your partner's fear, it could be your parents, it could be your colleagues. If you can let them say, that's okay, thank you, I appreciate it, I see what you're saying, I'm going to keep that into consideration, but I'm going to keep my belief, I'm going to keep my passion, and I'm going to iterate, I'm going to pivot, I'm going to find my way, right? That is the key. And then not make excuses and realize that, and people that have worked around me, and I've had now Yale MBAs that have worked around me, and they all say the same thing. Everyone wants to sort of draw a straight line from the beginning to the end, right? They say, this is where I am, and this is where I'm going, and they're like, let's plot this out. Project management, stage gate, whatever you want to call it, and they're like, this is the plan. And for me, I never looked at it. For me, if you watch me on my journey, it looks like this, all the way up that ladder, and then I get there, and everybody goes, how did that happen? He got there before everybody else. He did all of these things that were impossible, and it's just because I'm not letting other people's fear get in my way. I'm not bringing excuses to the table. I'm bringing solutions to the table, and that's it. And I tell every entrepreneur that I meet, it comes down to energy in business. Everything in this world is based off of energy. There's a flywheel, and there's two flywheels. There's negative energy and there's positive energy. And you're gonna get caught up in the negative sometimes, and you gotta get right back, right? My brother just passed away recently, and I told my entire family, I sat them down and I said, there's a cloud coming over this family right now. We can get stuck under that cloud and we'll see the death comes in threes, and there's gonna be more hurt and more pain and more, or we can push that cloud out of this family right away, and we can recover and heal quickly, and we'll be fine. And that, to me, is the energy of business, it's of life. I bring that to everything that I do, to my entrepreneurial journey, and to everybody that I talk to about entrepreneurship.
David, thanks for that personal story, and we all feel for your loss.
Thank you.
Olivia?
Yeah, I mean, real quickly, I echo and believe everything that Evan has said. I am going to say something that might be controversial, and I heard this from a neighbor of mine, and I didn't think about it beforehand, but he said, not everyone can be an entrepreneur. Okay, and I thought about that, and I was like, okay, that's true. You know, just because you wake up one day, you know, and want to be an entrepreneur, it takes a different mindset to be an entrepreneur. And you know, everyone on this table has the passion, has the drive, has the work ethic. Yes, these are the elements that you need, but not everyone can be so. Making that self-assessment is extremely important, because if you're not willing to do the things that you need to do, then it's going to be very, very difficult. That said, the positive energy is, if you have all these things, then you know you're 9 times or 10 times more likely, you know, to succeed. It's going to be easy enough, but you know, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. So I agree with everything else as everyone has said. Networking, sort of the reason maybe for my success is I've been a huge networker all my life. I've been a people person all my life. You know, connecting with people, the energy, absolutely. You know, people do business with people they like. You know, I haven't been the best, let's say, photographer, videographer in the room, but I was hired because people like me. Somebody asked me to speak in France. You know, I'm not the world's best photographer, you know, to speak at a keynote in France in front of a bunch of, you know, photographers. But he liked me. He met me at a conference. I showed up. He was there. We spoke French, and I got a call. So it's the people skills, and that's something that I just also try to mentor is sort of young folks. It's the soft stuff that's the hard stuff. It's all the soft stuff, you know, the technical stuff. I tell people I'm 80% therapist, 20% technical. This is not this, you know, it's the hard, it's the soft stuff that's the hard stuff. The thing I learned in corporate, you know, it's the people stuff that's the hard stuff. All that technical stuff's easy. You know, once you get that, you know, so just work on the soft stuff. Work on the stuff. So work on the people stuff. You know, and connect with folks, and you know, the doors will open.
Yeah. I had a boss say that to me once. He said, "I can teach you how to." Like, when I first got into finance, he said, "I said, you know, I don't have a background in this at all, right? But I've always loved small businesses. I wanted to support them." And he said, "I can teach you finance." He's like, you know, 2 + 2 is 4. I was like, "Can't teach you soft skills," and that's what you have in spades. And I agree 1,000%. It really is the soft stuff. You can learn, you know, YouTube and Google is a thing. You know, you can learn a lot of stuff.
That's a great point. Questions out there for our panel? Fire away. Don't be shy. We'll take the first one. Go ahead.
Hi, what's going on? My name is Jamil. Just to give a bit of context before I ask my question, I've been a freelance videographer for going on 6 years now, and up until the pandemic, in the beginning of the pandemic, found the best, most success I've had, and I decided to take the leap and launch my LLC as a digital marketing agency. Very small team, it's just 3 of us now, and it's only been a year. Now, hearing you guys speak, and one of the biggest reasons why I'm here, obviously, to connect, I've understood the importance of networking, right? And I correlate it to where I'm at now in my business, where I'm trying to scale, and I'm trying to find more people, more talent, and good people, right? Not in terms of skill, but who I can work with. Because believe me, in this space, you know, I know a lot of videographers, a lot of photographers, some that are great, some that are not so great, some that are still learning, some that are, you know, a-holes, and some that are just awesome people that I would like to continue working with. So what I'd like to ask is, if you can maybe even share a story of where you found yourself when you were, you know, wearing multiple hats and then figured out that, oh, in order to scale, I need a team, right?
Yeah.
So where did you find yourself in that moment where it's like, okay, obviously, you know, and obviously I know the answer of networking, but, and then I'm gonna, you know, would love to connect with you guys thereafter, because like I said, that's literally where I'm at right now. I'm trying to find opportunities to really scale and really build my business. You know, I'm a very autonomous person, but now I'm finally ready to say, okay, I understand that there are bigger opportunities out there, but I need a team. I can't do it by myself. So if you could just help me understand where you guys found that, where you found yourself, okay, I've been doing great by myself, but I need to take that next step to build out the system.
Great question.
I've never been by myself. I had a job working for an agency where in New Haven, and I left and joined a partner right away and had a partner on the other side because I realized you just can't do it by yourself. It's really, really hard, right? People think that there's always one person. Steve Jobs had somebody else, right? Like Bill Gates had somebody else. So you got to find. I think you start with finding good partners that are going to complement you, be a yin to your yang. Like everybody that I've worked with, when we go into a room and we talk to people, they always say, "Oh, you guys are yin and yang, right? You have to. You don't want people like you. You want people that are not like you. You want people that are smarter than you. People that are going to help you lift you up or lift up pieces of the business." So I'd say start there. Otherwise, you either got money and you can hire a lot of people, which in my case wasn't the case, right? We only had $5,000 when we started. Or you sort of just, so after, when we launched our first company, Digital Surgeons, first year we did $500,000 in revenue, right out of the gate. Me and Pete, we hired a couple people and we paid ourselves nothing, $300 a week. And we just let everybody else eat, and we grew. We did $500,000, and I went to my father, who had just sold. He had gotten into real estate. He just sold some real estate, and I said, "Hey, can you give me Can you give me some money so that I can accelerate this and make it happen faster?" Because he had just given money to my older brother to open up his. My brother was a doctor. To your point, in my family, there was no. It was just three: it was doctor, lawyer, or
Just Grace, got it. Not engineer, not even engineer. Okay, I got
He
it.
didn't know what that was. He didn't know what that was. So my brother was a doctor, and when he got out of he was a doctor of chiropractic, and when he got out of chiropractic school, my father gave him a little bit of money to start his practice. So I went to my father and I said, "Hey, can I get that too? I did this already by myself, but if you give me a little bit of money, it'll give me my cash flow that I need to grow and speed things up. I want to scale." And he looked at me and he said, no, he was on the phone, and he said, "No." He said, "You got to take one step on the ladder at a time." And I hung up on him. I was so mad. I was like, I have middle child syndrome. And I was like, "You gave it to him, you didn't give it to me." And I hung up on him. And then I just went about it. I did 1.2 million the next year, and then I just kept going and going and going. And now in hindsight, I realize that each step you go up, so if you're up to 3 people, you have to reevaluate what you did to get there and decide what you're not going to do moving forward.
That's right.
Right? That's the key. And by the way, I do that to this day. Right? Like literally just this week, I said, okay, we're no longer taking these clients. We're not going to take this type of business. We're not going to take this type of revenue. And you constantly have to adjust and optimize your business for who you are, for your skills, for your service or your products. And it's scary. It's really scary. For my brother, I remember for him it was not taking insurance anymore, and it was like scary because the insurance companies feed you all these people, but they didn't pay him properly for the services he was doing. They were dictating how much he needed to make, and it took him a long time to have the bravery to say, "I'm going to let go of this," and it turned out to be amazing. Right, back to people's fears. For me, it was not taking this type of client, not taking this type of revenue, not chasing these things, paying attention to the cues. Someone said the no a-hole rule. I just say asshole. So I I operate my whole life with the no asshole rule. Like there's a book, read the book, the no asshole rule. It's a beautiful book. So that's about hiring people you work with, the clients, right? Like I have qualifiers that I have now for every piece of business and every decision that I make. I have like the MBA ones, like the BANTS, which is BANTS, dude. You got an MBA, right? No, oh, sorry.
I got one and I don't know what it is.
BANTS like, so it's do you have the budget, the authority, the need, and the time? Right? That's like basic qualifications. But then I threw in some new ones where I was like, what type of person am I dealing with? Right? And that kind of stuff. And that's going to help you scale because then you'll get people that pay you properly, people that pay you for your worth, so that you're not running a charity.
Amen. Amen.
And all that stuff. So that would be my advice. I mean, that's and then just remember one step on the ladder at a time. And he said to me later on, he was like, the reason why I said that to you is because when you try to jump the steps, you fall down the ladder. And that was it.
Oh, yes.
Other questions?
I'm so mad at him, by the way. I wouldn't have lost it.
Go ahead.
It may be a offshoot of the question he asked. I'm not sure when he was talking about hiring people for partnering. And I think there's a real difference between hiring people to work with you and getting a partner. So I don't know if any of you have partners. If you do, can you tell me how you went about doing that? And if you don't, why don't you? Why have you chosen to be a sole owner of your business?
I can speak to that. I really resonate with what you said, and I think a general rule I have is I never do things alone, especially something big. And I think the reason why Margaret and I started working together, it kind of goes back to what I was saying before, is what we really, really connected on was a love of the city and then also a problem that we wanted to solve. And I think I would say that whether or not you want to bring on a partner or a teammate is making sure that that connection there, that you all have the same horizon line, is one of the most important parts. Because as David illustrated, the journey of entrepreneurship and starting something is so winding, and that is proof that you're doing something right. And I think another thing I would add is, and this sort of speaks to your question as well, Jamil, is we brought on our first 2 staff members about a year ago in September. We were very intentional, probably some people would say slow, about our growth. And I think the question that we were trying to answer in bringing on 2 staff members was, does the value of collab, we've been around for about 4 or 5 years, does the value of collab extend beyond me and Margaret, my co-founders' personalities, expertise? Does it extend beyond us, the value? And in hiring George and BC, the answer was a resounding yes, because they made our program stronger. They made us even more values aligned and tied to mission. And they also expanded the amount of work we can do. And to your question, Jamil, that was another reason why I brought them on, is because we were oversubscribed. We had too many entrepreneurs who were coming our way for me and Margaret to be able to handle, and it was affecting our quality. Once we started seeing that our level of excellence was being impacted, that's when we said we need to scale. And so whatever that line for you of excellence is, I would watch that line in terms of scale. And then going back to your question, that's a question that we've been really thinking about in this last year, because once that question was proved, okay, George and BC have proved that there's value in just this organization that extends beyond any individual staff member, then it's like this work is worth sustaining. Let's now create a plan for this work to sustain and this value to sustain. That included becoming officially a 501c3 and also hiring a new executive director, creating a plan to hire a new executive director, which we were thinking about over the last year or so, and then have put the steps into place now and are really, really far along the process in bringing a new leader, which for us was answering the question of, one of the values that's needed here in this organization is in some ways a new partner, right? Not a new staff member, because we're debating between, is it a director of programs or is it an executive director? We landed on executive director because what we needed was someone, an individual who had that zest to not just think about the next 2 years of collab, but the next 5 to 10 years of what this work can be. And when we realized that was the gap for us, we were like, okay, we need a new leader, and we, as leaders of this organization, will step away from that leadership role. So I hope that answers your question, because that was the question. Should we hire a staff member? Should we hire a partner? The answer for us was partner, based upon the problem that we were trying to solve.
Great. Anyone else want to answer that question?
I'm going to answer the question, I'm going to answer it on what not to do. I hired an ex full-time in my business whenever we go.
You're a good man.
Yeah, and we weren't dating at the time, but she was great at sales. So I thought, okay, she's great at sales. Here's the mistake I made. I thought one plus one doesn't equal 2. Meaning, if I'm making X in terms of revenue every year, just hiring another person, a salesperson, doesn't mean I'm going to make 2X. I made that mistake. Great salesperson, but one, obviously you don't mix past history, and things can get dicey, and so that's who not to hire. As talented as they are, as great of a salesperson as they are, you don't want to do that. But Jamil, I am running into that same issue now. I'm in the business, obviously. You develop a brand, you develop a name around the brand, and people want you. And so it's hard to bring other people or say that someone else is going to show up. But I hire for attitude, not talent per se. I always hire for attitude, and one of the things that I do is I bring people, I mentor. That's sort of my way of mentoring as well. I slowly bring interns and people.
You got any openings, or?
I've got in case of we've got Keontae right there, but I believe in actually doing versus watching. And you can watch YouTube all day, but if you're in the trenches, it's the learning experience is better. So I bring people. That's how I sort of do good and give back, and I just bring people on board. You won't get paid, but you'll get good experience. So that's my scaling ability.
It's worth more than money.
Okay, other questions out there?
I was going to just give a quick insight to his question in regards to partnership versus building it from the team. I've done both. I had that partner probably about 15 years ago in my first business where, she was the yin to my yang, and we complement each other, as David mentioned. But it became a marriage, and you're tied in so many different ways with taxes and all sorts of things and so forth and so on. And as I started, I actually had to write a check to end that marriage, so to speak. And pretty much bought out the whole LLC. So, but as I started my other business that I currently have now 9 years ago, I would have definitely scaled and grown it faster had I had a partner. But I knew what I wanted, what I didn't want. So it really becomes a decision that one has to make for themselves. I would have definitely grown it. But as I've grown to this point with other companies, I realized I've grown the team that some of them have percentage of equity in my companies and so forth. So I've come up with different ideas and strategic ways to give key members of my team equity, skin in the game, without having a full-fledged person that I'm married to in my business. So it really depends on an individual. But I 100% agree, had I had a partner 8 years ago, I would have grown my business to where it is now, probably 3 or 4 years.
I just want to make one comment. I spent 4 years in the insurance business and insuring businesses. And one of the failings of many minority-owned businesses is no succession plan, no partners. And that whole thing, and it's a catch-22. There is obviously something you have to give up, right? And everybody's got to decide what is the thing you're willing to give up to get something of more value. But if you get hit by a truck or you get sick, your business is not sustainable without another person. So whether it's equity in the game or whatever, and if you look at the list of successful minority businesses, if you look 5 years down, they disappear. They don't go on, and the reason why is there's one person at the top, and there is no partner. So
It's all
it is. It is.
It's about your team as well. I mean, I could spend a month away from my company right now and it'll run perfectly fine. So it's all about your leadership team and how you build that team and delegate it and build it. So again, not to debate, I'm just saying it's all about leading an organization and not being a solopreneur and having a team. I mean, I spent weeks from my business this year and to test my team. I spent all COVID creating the systems to build it, and I stepped away this year to test it. And my people, and to give them that autonomy to run the business without me. They appreciated it because I trusted them, but it also let me gauge where my leaks were on what to plug and what not to plug.
And I think it's a great point about the succession
You got
plan.
extra mics, you got those.
I think it's a great point about the succession plan, but it also depends on what you want your succession plan to be and what you want it to look like. It may not be transitioning it to a partner. You may not ever want a partner. Maybe you want to buy out, or maybe you just want to retire the business. So I think just having that plan in mind, though, is what's needed.
Great points. Thanks for sharing, Jeff.
So I'm Jeff Klaus. I'm with Berkshire Bank, which is a community bank based in Boston, but we've just recently entered the Southern Connecticut market. In fact, we're the only banking tenant of David at the district, so come out and see us sometime at Bears. That's really my home office, of the stack barbecue. And David, I had 5 children, and when you talk about sleeping like a baby, I hope they weren't sleeping like my babies, because you wouldn't get any sleep at all if that were the case. This has been a terrific conversation, and the audience comments have been equally terrific. My question is more of a macro question about the word equity, because we've heard a lot of discussion, conversation over the last several years about equity, particularly in the minority community, and the lack of equity, and how do we get community transition of equity so that we're inclusive and we have a diverse business community. I think the word equity inspires different definitions. I'd love to hear what you all think the word equity means. I'm a banker, so I think of it in financial terms. And I'll say one thing, my view is that what a lot of people think is equity and the lack of capital that is available to the minority community is really not so much debt, because there is a plethora of available debt. And it's not always the best kind of capital, especially when you have a growing business that hasn't really established itself yet. So saddling a business up with debt is not, in my mind, a substitute for equity. So I want to hear from you, though, before I go off on what equity is. So anyway.
Who wants to jump on that first?
I'd just like to say, so I absolutely hear you in terms of, debt not being the best way necessarily for a growing business. That said, I also come out of banking and spent about 5 years as an SBA lender, and then from there I worked for a community bank for 2 to 3 years. And what I can say that makes me sad to say is that when I was at a community bank and officially had the title of commercial loan officer, as far as I know, I was one of only 2 Black female commercial officers in the state of Connecticut. That is an indictment of the financial services sector. There are too many people in the financial services sector who look like you and not like me, with respect. And it is, frankly, I saw it as a lender, a barrier to entry for a lot of people of color. Because there are a lot of people who just can't wrap their head around, a successful a Black business. I was told just recently, as the executive director of, the lab at Concord, where my entire C-suite, with the exception of one person, is Black. Our entire organization, with the exception of one person, is Black. And I was told when one of our tenants said, "Isn't this wonderful that this organization is coming in to buy this building, save this space because the town was running out of money?" He said, when he said this to somebody, their response was, "Yeah, but they're Black."
Oh.
There are people who cannot conceive of successful Black people, and that is a problem. And it's a problem in the financial services industry, and that is why I do what I do on a daily basis.
Thank you.
Beautifully and powerfully said. Thank you. How I'd answer your question is, I think we'll be moving towards a more equitable city if every single entrepreneur has the ability to be a part of the current entrepreneurial ecosystem, try something, fail safely, and have that safety net, and be able to bring success to their individual livelihood, their family, and their neighborhood. I think when we think about one of our missions with Collab, and this might feel true to you all, we're aiming to replicate the sort of invisible or visible networks that a privileged entrepreneur gets to have. You know, someone like me graduating from Yale, the kinds of things like, an uncle who is an accountant, the ability to, stay with your family while you try something out. The ability to have access to an individual coach who will sit down with you and work through a business plan. We're trying to replicate that individual, that sort of invisible network that exists for someone who has access right now. And if we've fulfilled that, then we're fulfilling our mission.
Thank you.
This is so I come from a diverse background, right? I'm Jewish on my mother's side, Spanish on my father's side. My mother passed away when I was very young. She had no family, so I was raised in an entirely Spanish family, big Spanish family. Border crossers, right? Like, no wealth. So really hardworking people though. And when I started my business and I went to the banks and I said, can I get a loan? And all this SBA nonsense that was happening. I don't know how it is now because I don't need it anymore. But the answer was no, right? So we didn't get any money. And we were starting in 06 when everything was going downhill, so investors didn't want to invest in the company. So we just put $5,000, $2,500 each into a bank account. My partner was 24 years old and I was 26. And we just went. And I told you the story about my father, so he didn't lend me the money. Maybe my credit wasn't good with him. So, and then after the first year when we did that $500,000, I actually came to an event here in the Omni for the chamber. And I spoke, I think we won an award or something. I think it was one of the very first awards we won. And I spoke and I said, we're just looking for opportunity. We think we can make something happen. And there was a banker in the room who said, came right up to me. He's like, hey, I can help you out. And he said, come talk to me. And I sat down with him and I said, and I'm in New York, I'm very straightforward. Right? And I said to him, don't waste my time. I've already talked to a bunch of banks. They've all turned me down. If we don't have 2 years of tax returns, if you're not going to see the future, if you're not going to understand what it is that we're doing, right? To your point, they can't see what a black-owned business looks like, or maybe it's just a business that caters to the black community that they don't even understand exists, right? If you're not going to see what we're doing, and at the time it was digital marketing, and nobody knew what that was. They're like, what's that? I said, then you're wasting my time, and my time is precious because I could be building my business. And he turned around and he said, listen, I get it, I know what you're talking about. And I said, everything, all the paperwork, all the credit checks, nothing's going to pan out. But if you look at what we did in the first year and you talk to us and you understand where we're going, it'll work. And And I said, but if you don't, if you make me go through this process and it doesn't work out, I'm gonna get really pissed off. And maybe that doesn't matter to you. Maybe getting cursed out in 2 different languages is not good. Because that's all I know. I don't speak Spanish fluently. I only know how to curse. He took a shot. I got lucky. He took a shot. He gave us a credit line. The funny thing was, we didn't actually need it. We never tapped it. We only tapped it to keep it open. Still to this day, right? They say the bankers give you the umbrella when it's not raining, when it stops raining. So for me, I look at this stuff and I think it's incredible that everyone's trying to lean in. I'm leaning in too. Like I started a technology school for adult ed in an attempt to make things right. Didn't go as I had planned, so then we went in now into the high schools, which I thought was covered. I thought people were working on those pipelines to get minorities, black, brown, and women into technology, and it turned out that that's not the case. We're real far behind. So, you know, I just think for me, it's eyes wide open. It's getting people that are forward thinkers, right? Like I bought this shirt from this guy, Andrew Yang, that failed running for mayor of New York. And I love this whole mission. It's like not left, not right, but forward, right? Like enough of this tug of war bullshit. For me, equity is about looking forward. It's about pointing people in the right direction, and and listening to some of the stuff. Like I go into rooms and I hear people talking about, trying to get the people in this community of New Haven into like the elder care world, like taking care of, because that's what's happening, and that we need more bedpan changers and people that feed pills to people. And I'm like, do you see the salaries for that? You're telling that our communities in this city to go into that field? I'm like, that's bullshit. Why are we telling them to go, to go back? Like space is a real thing now, right? There's real money behind that. Like, why are we not talking about that? Aspiring people. And I think that it's just, for me, equity is about elevating the conversation no matter who the people are, right? And I don't think enough people do that. So that's what equity means to me. And then I would say to the people in the community, because I think what's happening right now is there's a pull in one direction and it's getting other people angry, right? And that's not the answer either, to just infuriate other people, whether it's women. Like I was with a woman the other day who is by far one of the most impressive CEOs I've ever met, and she feels minimized now because she's a white woman in business. But for her, she's like, she literally just said, but I'm a vagina. And she wants that, because she feels like she's finally there, but now it's being changed, and the narrative's changing. And I feel like, and that's that left and right, it's just pulled. And I think that if we can just elevate the conversation, if we can like make it so that everybody is striving for better, right? I heard an interview with Kanye West the other day, and he said, we can look at history, he's like, but let's talk about future, right? Let's talk about progress, let's talk about success. That's the stuff that I'm looking at as a person that's looking towards innovation, that's looking towards the future of communities, that's looking towards equity, is having those conversations, lifting those conversations up to the top, and realizing that sometimes they're not gonna land, but there has to be done, like enough. The conversations go too low, and for me, what I witnessed was they were too low. And for someone that likes to live in that helicopter, I'm like, it's not going to work, because my father didn't know what an engineer was, right? So I want to make sure that the Hispanic father in Fairhaven learns what a technologist is, what a computer scientist is, so he can say to his kid, you know what, there's another pathway. So that's what equity is for me.
Olivia, you're the last worker.
Sure, yeah, real quick. I mean, the word that came to mind for me was access. But as I'm listening to everyone here, I think what happens, just as a former factor, I think at the end of the day also it's about relationships. And are you willing to sit down, with the David, listen to his story, listen to his pitch, really understand what they're trying to do, and take a shot, and also, be creative. I understand regulators, I understand, the numbers, but, are there ways, to partner, to get, vehicles to use, to then fund, and create financing, because you've got to find certain ways of going beyond the numbers. You know, again, I'll reference, you know, in Africa, we don't have credit scores. You have to, and for as an entrepreneur, you have to become very creative. You can't be as rigid. And so this is a task that we're trying to figure out even more so in emerging economies. So you create funds, you create representations on boards that can then nod and guarantee this, that, and the other. But it's a dialogue, as the panelists have said. It's a dialogue, and it's about just relationship and being into the community and having that conversation.
Well, a big thank you to our panel. In the audience, I know they'll be around for a few moments so they can get those. But thank you so much for joining us for this panel. The big taste is about to start, or has started at 11:30. So feel free to wander on there. And thank you for being here at the Big Connect.
What were you going to say?